Okay, we're going to start. I know that we've got 35 people signed up for this webinar, so sincere apologies for the few of you, one in particular who was very early and had to witness the fact that my computer crashed this morning, so sincere apologies for that, but it's all good. Okay, so good morning to everybody and good afternoon at Greater APAC region. I know we've got some people calling in from China and from other parts of APAC. Lovely to have you on here. Absolutely delighted. My name is Domenica, CEO of Emerging Comms, and we have co-presenting with me Melody, who is our Business Development Director. So what are we going to go through today? And just so that you're aware, we are recording this session. We will send out a link to this recording, and you would expect to get that probably at some point tomorrow. I'm afraid, Melody, you're going to have to take over control because I've got slight issues with my laptop. Not ideal.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. So I think the first most important thing to say for those of you on this webinar or those watching later or joining a little bit later is things have radically changed in the last 3-4 months in China. Borders opened officially on the 8th of January after announcement just after Christmas, which means that all of the major exhibitions, and this is just a tiny handful of major exhibitions taking place in China in 2023. These are exhibitions that only last year were postponed or even cancelled and didn't even exist in 2021 and 2020. So this is now a fantastic opportunity to be leveraging other channels, which we'll talk about, in order to make sure you make the most of the spend at these very critical exhibitions and events taking place before September 2023. So what are we going to cover this morning? I will talk really briefly about what we do, because on the instances we don't, people tend to ask at the end, but what do you do and how can you help me? So I thought I would add that in today. Very unusual for us to do that. But we're then going to move very, very quickly into what's new in today's B2B marketing for China. So in other words, what does good look like? It's really, really important to recognize that one of the best ways to get it right in China is quite often to have a look at what other people are doing, get some ideas from that, and we'll talk about competitive audits, etc., etc. Then we'll talk about creating meaningful engagement, because it's not about reach. It's really about engaging with your complex B2B customers once you've deciphered who they are, and we'll talk about that. And then fueling that sales and marketing funnel right the way from the top, right the way through to conversion with your sales teams in or your distributors in market. And then we'll talk about some go-to steps when you leave this webinar in order to map out your action plan. And then if you want us to help do that, we'll talk about that as well. So very, very quickly, and it will be very, very quick, what do we do? So just move really quickly through this, Mel, please. Yeah. So we work with all sorts of brands, not just in the complex B2B sector, but as this is a B2B webinar, I will focus on that. And the sectors we work with tend to be across biotech, pharma, chemistry, physical chemistry, and also we do an awful lot in the B2B property space, consulting space, publishing, the librarian and article space. So what I would call industries that require a very complex decision-making unit in order to get from the start to the bottom of the funnel, but invariably do operate by having a human being by helping with that sale. That's what the one thing they have in common. All of our brands have got some foothold in China, but it really varies. Some have got one lone salesperson we're supporting and don't have a wholly owned foreign enterprise, and we're supporting that effort as well. And others have a very robust sales team. So it really does depend. And we kind of help all sizes of, when I say all sizes of businesses, we help businesses that are very established to those that are very new to China. Next slide, please. I think it's really important to note that and I'm actually got a webinar a couple of weeks that I highly recommend you join on globalization, because what we do and we insist on is making sure that there is an integration between your brand effort at headquarters, so that could be anywhere in Europe or the US, right the way through to making sure that what you're producing in China, or we are for you, is localized, so it's going to appeal to your target markets. but it's getting that balance right. It can't be too localized, can't be too global. And you only have to look at BMW at the weekend to have a look at how disastrous it can go wrong if you treat a different audience or differently from one from the other. So the integration of teams is critical. So we have a team in both Shanghai and here in London. I'll move on from testimonials because conscious of time. And just in terms of what we do and in terms of the things that we're going to discuss today, end-to-end solution in the right order, and we'll talk about an action plan at the end. Most importantly is knowing what the market opportunity and potential is for your industry and knowing where you fit. So what's your competitive advantage, making sure your brand is protected, making sure that your brand is represented right in market. Then on to the most obvious thing, which is creation of a comms strategy that's going to engage with your complex target markets that we've deciphered who they are, and then planning the channels where they hang out and in creating engaging content to do that, which could be any of the above. And we will talk about the ones that are most important to you on this webinar, but that could be PR and is very likely to be PR, some forms of social media, some forms of performance marketing, but also very importantly, breaking down the silos between sales and marketing and ensuring that we work with your sales team in market to improve conversions. Absolutely critical part of this process. So end-to-end solution. Carry on, Mel. There's three things to understand about China. One, it's very, very different, which we're about to go through. Most of you on this call, because I've had a look at the list, are already operating in China, will have some understanding of certain channels, some understanding of complexity and compliance. But one thing to understand is even just moving money to China is not easy. And we actually have to move money between a UK bank account, China bank account, between a UK entity and a China entity. It doesn't take 24 hours, it can take 2 weeks. So just understanding how media is paid for, dealing with the media in China, understanding the integration between the UK global brand and your local effort, and making sure, more importantly, you're writing and creating engaging marketing campaigns is absolutely paramount. The days as a B2B player in China of just doing things the way you used to do them, unfortunately, have gone. It's got very competitive. It's got very innovative and very creative. And we're going to show you exactly what that looks like. Okay, so let's just have a look before I move on to Melody's bit as to what does it look like in China in terms of B2B in 2023. There are 4 things that I've mentioned before, but I'm going to talk about those in a little bit more depth now. And there are 4 main challenges, but I see them as opportunities, as most entrepreneurs would, in terms of if you can understand these 4 main things, then you're on a very, 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 very good place to be very successful in China. The first one is just to understand the complexity of the market. The policies and legislation surrounding your industries, especially fintech, pharma, medical, and education being the most legislated out of all of the industries for B2B. Understanding those policies and legislation is one of our jobs for our clients, is to be able to say, there is new legislation coming out. You need to be aware of it. We will have to pivot what we're doing. We can no longer say this. We have to say that. We can no longer use that channel. We have to use this channel. But that also goes beyond that, in as much that your consumers and so those actually buying into your product at a B2C level, which is not what your job is, but you need to be aware of it. And your B2B decision-making unit will change all the time. What they engage with, how they engage, and their behavior is changing every 5 years. We talk about our clusters in terms of their behavior, in terms of their needs and wants, and in terms of 5-year cycles. So what I'm now doing in terms of planning campaigns in 2023 is nothing like what I did when I started in this market 11 years ago. So the first thing is the complexity, and just being agile and being able to move very quickly and take the advice of your agency in terms of what needs to be done. The second thing that so many brands and B2B players fail to recognize is to learn from your competition. No matter how established you are, somebody else is going to be more established, and you're not competing with just global players, you're competing with local players, especially increasingly in pharma and biotech and fintech in China. They're so good at copying what we do here in the West and doing it quicker and in a more agile manner. So learning what they're doing, learning who they are, and it's not going to be the competitors you've got here in your home markets, is one of the easiest ways to define what your competitive advantage is. So what you think your USP, unique selling point, is in the eyes of your consumer, say in Germany, Spain, Italy, France, UK, is going to be very different in China, because your product will be consumed at a B2B level in a very different way. The third thing is just keeping up with channel evolution. Now, Melody and I were laughing about this yesterday. So when we were planning campaigns, 7-8 years ago together at Emerging Comms, there are channels that didn't even exist that we'll be going to be talking about today that are critical. And I've no doubt next year there'll be more. And I've no doubt there'll be even more fragmentation of the digital landscape. And often online are just so integrated together in China that what you do in an exhibition or an event's got to be integrated with your online effort. And we'll talk about that. And then finally, I think the most important thing, and something I'm really passionate about, is that balance between global versus China. Absolutely critical, because if you are too global, it's not going to be relevant to your B2B customers in China. If you're too local, it's not going to look on brand, and you're going to lose the amplification you've got globally. It's also going to be in things that make sense. And I'll give you examples. That might be your distributor running your WeChat channel. That could be a salesperson being responsible for marketing, and their sweet spot or their strength is actually sales, not marketing. So we see this all the time. And out of the 4 things, and I see this with huge agencies, management consultancies, as well as clients, quite often they'll get the number 1 and 2 correct, and they'll forget about number 4. And this is where the biggest opportunities lie and the biggest threats. Thanks, Melody. Next slide, please. So today's B2B consumers are expecting to see marketing in multiple formats. Video, we're going to talk about this, image-based, auditory, so audio, what we call podcasts over here. They're going to expect to see it on social media platforms. They're going to expect to be able to search you on directories and white papers. But they also want to be delivered information with a creative and innovative format. Gone are the days where you just go to an exhibition, translate some things into Chinese, give somebody a business card and hope that's going to stick. That's no longer going to work. Community and influencers in vertical sectors are absolutely critical. Do not look at influencers in China as being those that only represent luxury B2C brands. That's not the case. It's very, very important. And when we engage with, say, for Great Ormond Street or Premier Research, or any of our complex B2B brands, we're using vertical channels to do that. And just being on top of what your customers want and how that changes all the time is absolutely critical too. So talking to customers, because they're changing how they want to engage with you all the time. Thanks, Bill. So interestingly, given that we're coming out of COVID, and in China, they've been in a COVID bubble for 3 years. For the UK, it was about 14, 15 months before we stopped all restrictions. Restrictions only stopped in China early January this year. That is 3 entire years. That's 36 months. There was nothing. Yet in 2022, which is last year, where there were still restrictions across the board, there was an increase in spend in China from global and local brands. And not surprisingly, over 21% were spending over 1 million on their spend. Very, very, very small proportion are spending, 120 to 350 grand, and only 20% less than 120 grand. Depending on the size of your market, the understanding or the premise at board level that you can do really well in China with threepence or 20 grand, but you're spending maybe 3 million in Germany is nonsensical. You have, yes, over 3 billion consumers in China, and you have a very, very large pot of opportunity in China, but it means you've got to get cut through in a very, very noisy market. So you do need to allocate a budget for China as opposed to just what we call winging it. But having said that, balancing that risk and that investment is very important, and we will talk about that in a minute. So offline is dominating overall spend. It's not surprising, but online and offline have to be integrated together. Depends on the industry, but events and exhibitions are really important. And we pivoted our clients in 2020, 2021 and 2022 to include webinars that were really successful and live streams. And now what's happening is brands are doing a mixture of both, even at the same time at their events and exhibitions. So the line of offline and online there isn't one in China. And so you need to make sure that whatever you do is very integrated. So your sales teams are talking about the same things as your other teams are, and you're representing that, whether that's offline or online. It's got to be very consistent. There's an increasing confidence that B2B brands seem to be getting better at what they're doing. They think it's effective. They're measuring it. And just getting on to a really strong point I talked about on a B2B podcast yesterday, which is you can measure everything in China. And if anybody tells you, if any agency or consultant tells you can't, that is absolute rubbish. You can track anything. It's about where and how you track it. And you should be tracking it, whether that be webinars, exhibitions, work with influencers, vertical channels, social, paid, and it all should really be ideally on a dashboard. You've got agencies managing it. You've got very clear KPIs. So those that are doing that are very confident what they're doing is working. So there's an increased confidence in the last 36 months, especially in the last year, that things are definitely improving in terms of their exposure to their clients, and that not least because the events are now completely back up and running. Now, in terms of success factors of how B2B brands can achieve higher marketing effectiveness, the number one success factor that we found with our research is actually keeping up with customer trends and learning from competitors, and not ignoring the Gen Z market, your younger generation, your graduates, your recent graduates. Certainly with a lot of the very complex campaigns we run recently, we have run campaigns to this market as well, very, very successfully, because even though they won't be the budget holder, they are an intrinsic part of the decision-making unit, pushing the information up to their boss and their boss's boss. And so to ignore them is actually, one, missing a really big opportunity, and two, could be pretty catastrophic in some industries, depending on what it is, especially anything to do with pharma, biotech, medicine. There's such an important segment of that decision-making unit. Success factor number two we found with brands is those leveraging rich content formats. And on average, those that are doing well when they measure is 5 different content formats. So that could be an infographic, that could be video, that could be a white paper, that could be events and exhibitions. So it really depends, and no brand is the same, even in the same industry. You'll have a different competitive set, different wants and needs for your customers, different competitive advantages, but you can't just leverage one channel with one message. You will not get cut through. You've got to be creative as to taking that content and repurposing it, surely, totally. But making sure that you're using different touch points is absolutely critical. And the most used content in B2B brands these days, not surprisingly, sort of graphic content on social media tops the chart, 81%. But webinars and live streams have become really important in the last 3 years at 64%. But don't forget things like video, PR and case studies. Really important that you build credibility of why you to your target segments, because the kind of confidence to use a new B2B brand is very, very important that you build that through testimonials and case studies. You might want to switch your video off, Lauren, sorry. The most effective content in B2B brands marketing that we found, as I said, was webinars and case studies. But it's just really important to recognize that whatever channel you're using, and this is Premier Research's WeChat channel, has got to be formatted for that channel. we quite often see when we're unpicking messages from brands, when they've done it either themselves or used other agencies, they'll use exactly the same format on Weibo, Juhu, WeChat, Douyin, and of course you can't do that. It's just nonsensical. Or worse, they'll take their Instagram content or their Facebook content or their LinkedIn content, and they'll translate it and try and repurpose it for Chinese channels. You need to be very clear that the format for each channel has to be very specific to that channel to get true engagement. Number 3 is diversified touch points. We talked about this, talked about different formats, but actually there's more than 20 touch points in an average B2B decision-making unit. And you need to be using at least 5 different channels within those touch points. The most important thing, and we will talk about this, is mapping out that sales funnel from top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, and not forgetting about any of it, and not having what I call a leaky bucket or a leaky funnel, where you might be really brilliant top of funnel, you're great at amplification, but then you don't nurture those contacts. Because most B2B industries, and it really depends on the industry, absolutely, but the cycle from top to bottom of funnel is quite long. And so if you're spending money on amplifying and fueling the top of the funnel, and you're not talking to your leads, if you want to call them that, or your prospects, or the data within your CRM, then you're missing a trick. But even if you do that, you've got to remember that you've got to be converting them at the bottom, and that means support to the sales teams in market. Thanks, Melody. And the most used channels today, and we will, Melody, be talking about this a little bit more, most of our B2B brands have got some form of landing pages, .cm websites. If not, then they've got a WeChat mini program, customized menu bar on WeChat. So they've got a content hub, but they're all 70% are doing offline roadshows and exhibitions to some extent, especially in education, complex B2B, exhibitions, conferences, press launches. But they're using their official WeChat as a CRM tool, as a customer service tool, content hub. Some of them are leveraging nearly half now video channels on WeChat, which is a relatively new thing in the last 2 years, as well as vertical media industry associations, and we've got a couple of associations on this webinar actually, and paid search. So a real mixture of channels and activations for different reasons. It's fueling different parts of the funnel. It has a different purpose for activating your decision makers. And most effective tends to be, but you could argue it depends where in the funnel though, so it's a little bit subjective, but it's official WeChat is an absolute must for any brand in China, even early doors. First thing you must sort out, work with an agency to do that, and have a customized menu and have a presence, be able to use it for customer service, for pushing out marketing, because email doesn't work in China. But offline roadshows and exhibitions, absolutely. Engage with professional opinion leaders and industry influencers who have followers, who are your target market, vertical media industry, and paid search, in that order. And as I said very, very early on in this webinar, it's like climbing a staircase. It's about mitigating risk and investment for return. And so we always have new brands to China going up that staircase and trying different things. And we normally start with WeChat, then offline, and then we work our way up that staircase as things become effective and drive sales that then fuels more marketing spend. Over to you, Melody. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dominica. Before I start, I just want to remind everyone, we do have a Q&A session after this presentation. So please feel free to leave your questions in the Q&A box. And at the end of the session, we will take some time to answer some of your questions. If we run out of time, we will definitely follow up with an email. So thank you. So as Dominica mentioned, B2B marketing can be a longer and very complex process. And the days when B2B customer acquisition is simply just about marketing team passing on a lead to sales team to follow up, it's long gone. The B2B customer journey is an actual long and nurturing process, from educating the market, whether it's through your webinar, your white paper, to really help them to understand your proposition, to building a brand awareness, whether it's through offline trade show or influencer campaign to really explaining what's your USP, your brand value that you can offer to your target audience, and in order to solve clients' problem. And with your current clients, you identify new situation, new gaps, new demands from your clients to develop new product. Then you have to go back to educating the market. So it's a series of actions that will help B2B customer acquisition happen in this very complex channel. So as we mentioned, whether you are new to China or you are already established, but you really want to enhance your marketing effort in China, you do need to have a plan in place, whether it's a China roadmap or activation plan for your marketing campaign. You really need to start looking at reviewing where your competition is, both on the global and also local level. That will help you to understand where your position is in the market, because it can be very different from your global proposition and positioning. And then also to understand what's the pain point, also buying trigger from your current customers, why they want to buy your products. And then further on, look into their purchasing journey, their touch points, in order to make sure you are engaging with them in the right channel at the right time. And with that plan in mind, you will be able to develop a 12-month activation plan that will give you a KPI objective with a right investment level, so you don't just spend money to everywhere without getting the results, as well as mitigating risk. So this is really important for any B2B brands to start thinking about or to do before they enter the China market. This is just an example we've done for our other B2B brand to help them to do a roadmap or marketing activation plan. So it's really comprehensive. The other thing really critical when you consider entering the market, this is for the new entries, is to really protect your brand first, because we quite often have clients, they already enter the market and then they later on realize, oh, we don't really have a trademark or domain name in place. And then we found out some domain name squatter or trademark squatter already got in there, and you have to spend a lot of money to negotiate it back. So before you really talk about your brand to make a big splash in China, you do need to have your brand protection in place. So speak to your agencies, because a lot of the platform like the domain name, you might need to register with a Chinese platform. You might need to also have a Chinese staff to register against, because they do real name verification. So speak to your agency or your team in China to help you identify this and secure this as soon as you can. The other thing is really important, whether you are going to a trade show or to start publishing your content online, you do need to have a brand brochure or that brand kind of lookbook or some sort of education material to really help your prospective clients to understand your proposition, your unique selling point that's different to the competition. So we will really recommend you create this brochure in localized Chinese, not just translate from your global material, really understand who you are talking to and making sure it's the language, the kind of copy is talking to them, engaging with them. This is an example we one of our clients, EU Automation. They provide different manufacturing parts to ODMs, and they have very dynamic automatic system to help people to buy in a very fast turnaround. And they come to us when they first thinking about entering China. They were very clever because they know they need to get this right before they spend huge effort, whether it's a resource or investment into China. They want to make sure they get it right before. So they asked us to develop a China roadmap. So we're looking into their competitive analysis. We tend to be a prospective client to contact their competitors to really understand how competitors, their funnel, how they close their sales, their journey look like. so we can learn from it or try to see if there's a gap that we will try to avoid. And also we help them to make sure they secure their trademark, Chinese domain name. We set out their Chinese website and also all the Chinese official social media, and then later deploy a marketing activation plans across different channels. So with that in plan, they were able to generate 5,000 leads in the first 10 months of their activation in China. So I'm going to spend a bit more time talking about the key sales funnels for B2B sector. So this is typically how we see it. This is very different from consumer sector, B2C sector, because credibility building is essential for B2B sector. Especially you will probably go through a very rigorous due diligence procurement process in order for your customer to sign up or purchase with you. So you definitely need to have that in your plan, is to have a credibility building channel, whether it's through your website, through online PR, by utilizing key opinion leaders or influencers or professional opinion leaders to talk about your brand. Utilizing search engine marketing, so for brand building and also building your credibility. So again, that's really important because when you are exhibit in the trade show, people will start searching your brand on Baidu, which is the top Chinese search engine. So when they search on your brand, they want to see your website. They want to see what people are talking about you. They want to see what media are covering about your brand. So you need to have a visibility. So that's a very important essential hygiene factor you need to cover. And then when you have brand awareness and credibility in place, you need to start thinking about how you can drive preference, how to generate leads, how to nurturing those leads. So then you can start thinking about some social ads, working with different type of influencers, more for lead gen or for generating sign up for your webinars or to your trade show. So that really will give you opportunity to demonstrate, explaining to your potential customer your brand value and the unique selling point. And then later on, during the lead generation process, you also have other type of social ads that's very effective to help you convert leads, to drive registration to your, whether it's a social lead gen channel or search engine optimization, search engine marketing, that will help you generate leads that you can nurture and convert. And so first of all, I'm going to spend a bit of time about the key channel for building credibilities. So as we see, there's three very useful and effective channels. So from influencers, so we are talking about more professional opinion leaders. They are very authority in their specific expertise or experience in that sector, whether it's pharmaceutical, medical, biotech, fintech. So it's very important to engage with them. And then you also need to consider your own channel, because that's critical for procurement process, for brand to really understand what you offer and provide them the most up-to-date information, whether you have partnership with different global firms and just demonstrating your strength that's different from your competition. And then we also have the online PR. It's really important as well because it's not just able to demonstrate your credibility, also it gives you very quick visibility on Baidu. We will talk about it a little bit more. So first of all, the website. So website, it's really important for B2B brand. If we're talking to a consumer brand or retail brand, we sometimes tell them actually don't bother with investing huge amount of money on website, because just setting out social media, whether it's WeChat or Little Red Book, it's enough to give enough content and as a content hub for your consumers. But it's very different. B2B clients, B2B has a lot of stakeholders, especially the due diligence through procurement it's important. They need to look at your website to really understand, are you authentic? What your offer is really will help them to bring in success. So it's important for B2B brand to think about establishing their own website. If in the beginning the budget is a restriction, or we often will tell clients you can just have a brochure page, so you don't have to have full-blown website. You can have a starting point with some basic information of your brand, but you do need to have a website presence in order for that to happen. And also a website is very effective channel for tracking users to see where they kind of go through your nurturing program on that. And especially if you're working with pay-per-click or SEO campaign, website can be really effective because you can track everything. And this is really important for you to think about website, what's the do and don't. We definitely need to tell the clients, don't have anything that's linking with your Western channels. So don't use any kind of Google Analytics, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, because China has this great firewall about China. They don't like sites has Western social media because they are banned in China. So if you have those on your site, you will find your website won't be able to be seen in Chinese consumers. And definitely remove from having a global domain name, looking at the China domain name, so like .cn, .com.cn, because that will really tell the users you are committed to China market. And also, again, that will help your website performance. And definitely use China hosting rather than global hosting, because you will find global hosting will just too slow and sometimes also blocked in China. But if you are now ready to invest in China hosting, because there's also some legal implication to it, you can look into content delivery network. So you host it through Hong Kong or Singapore. So that will also help you with the site speed, also the visibility in China. And optimize for Baidu SEO rather than Google SEO. Other things that's really critical to know is, this is often we find lots of clients, they make mistake. They just translate the website content with Google Translate, and everything just doesn't read very well. And actually sometimes it could be a joke for the Chinese consumer to read your content. So definitely avoid just translating your content, localize your content, and make sure you understand who your target audience, understand who you are talking to. So making sure all the copy are addressed to them in a very resonating way. Having an inquiry form or having a link to your WeChat sales funnel. So WeChat, I'm going to explain a bit more. It's great for customer service functionality. But if you don't have that in place, definitely have an inquiry form that at least you can capture all the leads. And utilize any your customer testimonial case studies, because that really will demonstrate your unique selling point, your success. So that's the key one. If you want to find out more, we will be happy to discuss a bit more on the website form. The second most important channel as an own channel is WeChat. And in some of the instances, when you don't have a huge amount to spend on website, you can have just a brochure site, but then we definitely will encourage clients to set up their WeChat, because this is where people are hanging out, your B2B target audience are using. Why? Because they have pretty much 73% of penetration to the China's internet users, 1.3 billion monthly active users. At the moment, there's 20 million official accounts, or account that's set up by brand, utilizing as a brand hub. So this is one example we set up for EU automation. They have their WeChat official account. And with that WeChat menu bar, you can see you can have different sub tab. It's almost like a mini site within the mobile interface. the other thing is the stickiness of the WeChat is really high. So 90% of users spend 90 minutes a day on WeChat. So you can see how much time every day they look on the content, they chat on the WeChat, they utilize WeChat for different functionality. So this is hugely important. And also for B2B marketing, this is important, Dominica already touched on. So email, definitely it's not available, a bit like it's dead in China. People don't use email anymore in China. So WeChat kind of replace email to become email marketing in your pocket. WeChat, why is that? Because WeChat, they allow a longer article format. It's almost like an e-newsletter as you send out to your regular consumers with really in-depth content, as well as you can embed video, images, and also call to action to your lead form, whether you want them to download a white paper, whether you want them to leave contact detail for further engagement. So it's definitely very useful as a lead generation program. But on top of that, WeChat is a very important content hub for everything you are doing, whether it's an offline event, whether you are doing a webinar, you are doing some activation campaigns through programmatic display, your SEM, SEO, you are engaging with key opinion leaders. You can all connect them into WeChat through WeChat QR code. So that's how people tend to find you. So you embed WeChat QR code in all your marketing material, in your point of sale stand, in your marketing brochure, and people just scan it, they will instantly follow your brand account, your official accounts on WeChat. At the moment, more than 50% of B2B company has set up WeChat video channel. So this is a separate channel. It's nowadays becoming almost like LinkedIn in China, because video channel, they can help, you can see your like-minded, your friends, if they like certain content, you will be able to see it. So it gives additional broadcast ability to help you to spread your brand. So again, also talking about, it's a great way to engage your customers because WeChat has a specific functionality for sales and customer service. So if you're interested in this, again, we are very happy to have a separate discussion with you, because WeChat is so dynamic, so complex. So you can use them in a different way, for the marketing, for the sales conversion funnel. So the third one is the online PR. Oh, sorry, just going a bit quickly. Yeah, online PR. So this is a very quick win for a lot of brands because, first of all, you can engage with lots of major media sites, even very down to very specific vertical segment, whether it's for medical, pharmaceutical, manufacturing. So you can target those media to have your very high profile PR news to be published on their platform. So you can instantly generate lots of awareness, brand exposure to the right audience. The other benefit is with PR release on different media channels, because Baidu, they index media articles, news article in the first brand search listings. So when people search on your brand, the first thing they see is the latest news about your brand. So it gives you a very quick visibility on Baidu search without you spending a lot of money on pay-per-click or spend a lot of time on search engine optimization. So it's often very useful for building that quick brand visibility. Sometimes it's also very useful if you have some negative PR articles that's like currently on the site, and you can utilize this to kind of neutralize and also help you to push down any negative PR article that's currently on Baidu. So this is one example. We help unite students. They work with not just the consumer, the Chinese student, but they also want to build presence to the agents to help them to sell more accommodation to the target audience. So they have this article about they acquire the second largest Liberty Living student accommodation. So this is a massive news. So they utilize the PR angle and also make sure that we generate massive awareness as well as coverage on Chinese major media portals. Okay, so moving on to influencer marketing. This is the third most important channel for building brand awareness. So you might heard key opinion leaders, KOL, is quite often, it's the term that we use for Chinese marketing. But for B2B sense, we tend to mention it as a POL, so professional opinion leaders. They are hugely important in helping you to demonstrate your unique selling point to your target audience, because they tend to have a very niche and large followings. Those followers following them because they are authority in certain industry, in certain expertise. You could almost find in every single industry, there will be a POL that's available for you to work with. One thing we often get asked about is how we can find them, because they can be so niche. So there's 4 ways you can find a POL for your industry, whether it's through social listening. So there's a lot of tools we can leverage to listening what key opinion leaders or POL are talking about your brand already. So you can decide to work with them. You can also do competitive research. So looking at what competitors are leveraging on the influencer marketing. So you can work with them, you can get some ideas. Also, the other way to do it is sometimes those influencers could recommend potential influencer to you. The final way to do it is to talk to your consumer, talk to your current customer to see where they find you, what sort of content they've been consuming, so where they are hanging out. And so that's the kind of 4 ways you can identify influencers that you can work with. This is a very successful campaign we've done for Premium Research. So they leverage over 100 plus different industry key opinion leaders in, and also leverage their database, their follower base, in order to generate webinar sign up, and also their white paper content downloads. And it has been hugely successful with all this content, all these key opinion leader working with them. So I'm coming to the last session of my my part. So I'm just going to talk to mention 2 very important B2B content. So first of all is the webinar. So webinar become one of the key content formats when the lockdown was in place, because the physical event and trade show was no longer available for brands to attend. So a lot of companies start using webinar as a way to engage with target audience. But it didn't just go away once the lockdown has been lifted, because brands start to realize how useful webinar can be. This can be very flexible way to engage with your target audience. And so this continues to be one of the main content formats that brands utilizing. So Gauche has done a lot of webinar, and they're also targeting very specific pediatrics communities, and with a lot of attendee generating from working with different influencers. That was a very successful webinar format. And the other thing we want to talk about is video. Video is not just a content that you use for B2C sector, for B2B it's also very important, because the dynamic format is able to help you to demonstrate your brand credibility, and you can also utilize it for your brand testimonial with your customer, your case study. So this kind of format, more and more B2B brands are investing into. So in summaries, so I talk quite a lot of content, so I just want to quick summarize the key takeaway for my session. So when you think about entering China, definitely starting from have a plan in place to mitigate risk, also making sure you spend your budget wisely and set the right objective for you to achieve. And also very important, don't forget to protect your brand, whether it's your domain name, your trademark. Building your brand credibility is a must. So you need to think about having some of your own channel in place, whether it's a website or WeChat, for sure, it's a very important channel for you. And leveraging influencer campaign or online PR can be a really quick win for you to build out brand presence as well as credibility. And finally, looking at what sort of content you have that can be developed into video format in order to tell more kind of engaging brand story to really showcase your brand strength to your target audience. Okay, I'm going to move on to Dominica. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melody. Very insightful. And the joys of having no schools today.
I know.
I thought Guy might pop his head up, but he didn't. Welcome back, everybody. So let's just quickly talk about fueling the funnel before we finish off and open up to Q&A, conscious of time. So next slide, please, Melody. So I would say that when we talk to brands and they come to us and they say, Dominica, we've been operating in China X number of years, but we're just not getting conversions, it is nearly always that they spend a lot of time and effort fueling the top of the funnel, amplifying. They maybe got an agency doing that, and that's in the responsibility of the marketing department. And then they've got some lone salesperson in China, possibly they're based in the greater APAC region, Singapore, Thailand, or Hong Kong. And there is total disjoint between the two. And this happens in literally every industry we see. So the middle of the funnel is ignored. There's no nurturing of that data, and it is more complex, certainly. We have here in the UK Salesforce and HubSpot and many CRMs that are used by a lot of organizations, us included. So that integration of your middle of funnel is absolutely paramount, because it is, as we said, a long sales cycle. There's a really big part which is credibility building. So people now know who you are, but you've then got to build that credibility with that audience. You've got to keep talking to them. You can't ignore them and then suddenly expect that they're going to convert. And this is the best thing you can do, is to integrate your marketing and your sales effort is the first thing. Make sure that you're having meetings with marketing and sales in the same call. We certainly don't have our monthly meetings with our clients without inviting and including the China salesperson or distributor, because it would be nonsensical. They're going to give us the anecdotal evidence and the objections that clients might be giving. They're going to tell us what's converting and what isn't. And then the middle of the funnel really is about the integration of those two efforts. So who's going to do what, who's got what responsibility, and how you're going to nurture those leads. Very important to be using WeChat for some of that, but it won't just be WeChat, it will be other channels as well. So just a real integration between the two efforts. And what tends to happen is marketing and sales aren't even in the same country or even in the same continent, and that's why you get this complete disjoint. But this is the single biggest opportunity to actually increase conversion down the funnel, is to integrate that effort. Next slide, please, Modi. So in terms of collaboration, as I talked about integration of the two teams, and this also transcends to brand alignment and protection as well. Marketing might be in the hands of somebody like us, a specialist agency. It might well be at HQ. It may well be in market China. The sales team are very likely to work for the company. For example, there's companies on this webinar. However, it is really important to understand why both sides need to work together. And also there has to be a certain amount of selling in to get the two departments to work with each other. We all know how marketing loves sales and sales loves marketing. We have the same in any organization. So really important. We'll start with sales first because we're kind of moving backwards. Really important that the sales department are feeding back to marketing what is converting, what is effective, what isn't effective. We've got data certainly from marketing, but having great anecdotal evidence from this worked at this exhibition, at the event, everybody had noticed X, Y, and Z that we'd done, absolutely fantastic, do more of that, or this wasn't optimized in order for the client to understand it, or we need content around this. So including your sales department or people or person in your marketing decisions, and almost working backwards, is paramount. But similarly, working downwards, there's got to be feedback to the sales department and to the board on what lead quality is converting, what's working, what isn't, what needs to be changed. Everything must be measured. It doesn't matter whether you're using video, whether you're using WeChat, whether you're using Weibo, vertical opinion leaders, it doesn't matter. You must be tracked because every industry and every client will have a different dashboard in terms of what's working. And obviously it makes sense to amplify and put more effort behind the channels that are working versus those that aren't. And also be very sure where they're actually, what their purpose is in your funnel. And a lookalike seeding strategy you can do based on profiling, much the same way you do in the UK and in the West, but just using different channels. So collaborating those two teams, I would say out of all the things that we do, this is the single biggest quick win. And it really is quite often. I've heard some horror stories when we've done, or we've found some horror stories when we've done some research. We found 2 salespeople in market that had not spoken to their boss in years, and their boss didn't even know that they reported to them. We've found situations where the sales departments are responsible for the marketing and they know nothing about marketing, or they are just freelancing out all of their content and their marketing activation because there's nobody else to do it, or there's no support, or they've never met their boss, and the list goes on and on. So integration, really important. And with video now, with WeChat, with Zoom, with Teams, and Teams works in China, we use it all the time for our teams in Shanghai. There isn't really an excuse not to integrate that effort and meet up on a regular basis. So it really is the biggest opportunity, yet the biggest threat when things go wrong. And also don't forget as well, if you don't nurture your salespeople in market, look after them, make them feel special, support them. What's to say that they're not passing their leads on to the competitors? We've had that before. Or that they are not thinking about making a move quite quickly or taking your database to a competitor. So from a protection perspective, you've got to keep those people very close and really look after them, really nurture them, and really support them. Next one, please, Mel. Done that one. Next one. And this just comes back to basic marketing principles, which is reach, so amplification, top of funnel. Your target audience know who you are. You communicate with them middle of the funnel. You get leads. You answer those in a timely manner from the sales department. Carry on nurturing them till they convert, and then you make those, that whole feedback loop. You make those customers your platinum customers and get them talking about you, testimonials, case studies, video testimonials, so on and so forth. The marketing principles in China are no different to anywhere else in the world. It's just the complexity of the channels and the audience, but the principles remain the same. There is no difference whatsoever. Next slide, please. And track everything. It doesn't matter what it is. And be really, really, really careful of false fake data if you're using another agency. Things like, oh, we've had an awful lot of reach and an awful lot of engagement. There are agencies that are unscrupulous that will do things such as makeup or use chatbots and use automated AI technology to make up engagement, to make up comments, but it's really easy to spot. Just ask an expert and they will be able to tell you if they are real engagements or not. They'll be able to tell you if things have been tracked properly, but you need to track all the way down the funnel for every single activation you're using for both organic as well as paid activations. Next slide, please. Just moving on to Q&A. So just before we move on to Q&A, because some of you I know will drop off, we do actually have a road mapping exercise that we can do for those that have attended this webinar all the way to the end. And that is something that we propose a discount for. And if it's not on this deck, we'll be sending it along with the email anyway tomorrow, along with this recording. This recording will be sent as a PDF because some of you may not have some of the fonts or may not be able to download the video. So we'll send it as a PDF, and we'll send that, that offer for webinar attendees. But in addition to that, please follow me on LinkedIn. That's Domenica Dilietto, or email info@emergingcomms.com. We have got a number of really, really important webinars and events coming up next month, which is only, of course, next week. One of them is brand alignment. And if you can keep that up, Melody, and we'll go back in a second. One of them is brand alignment, and one of them is Little Red Book. So the brand alignment webinar that I alluded to is about brand protection and about the integration of teams. Really, really important for anybody doing business in China. You'll find it really useful. And we're joined and delighted to be joined by Little Red Book. Now, whilst you might not think that's relevant for B2B, it's really an important webinar to understand how to use content in China, how to create engaging, meaningful campaigns. You'll still find it useful. And so both of those are appearing in May. You'll find the information of that on our Emerging Comms website under the events section. And also, if you sign up to our newsletter, we will be emailing about those events in the next coming weeks anyway. Here's our email addresses, myself and Melody. If you have any questions you're too scared to ask, or you think about afterwards, or you want further resources or information, if we just go back one, just because everybody tends to say to us, well, that's all very well and good, how can you help us? We don't really know where to start, or we don't know where our problems are. That is nearly always the question we get asked. We're not getting the sales we want. We're down on our KPIs. We're not going to hit our KPIs. Can you help us? We can roadmap a success plan for you. We've done it for so many brands. And normally we charge an awful lot more than this. But if somebody sat through a webinar, I feel that we should do the best that we can for brands. It's two steps, really. One is an in-depth research project to identify opportunities and threats. That'll be to talk to your salespeople, your customers, and look at your competitors. We can then map out a China marketing activation plan for success with the right channels and the right comms plan. We've done that with so many brands from a B2B context. SlimFast, who were talking to their distributors, Unite Students talking to their agents, Hemswell talking to antiques buyers community. I mean, you can't get much more niche than that. University of Dundee talking to their agents, EU Automation, which Melody talked about, who were targeting those within the manufacturing industries because they supply parts for some belts within factories. We've done Liberty London's wholesale B2B strategy, so the list goes on. And we can normally deliver that within a month, and we will deliver that at just under 5K, which is absolutely nothing to have an activation plan. I would rather do that, in all honesty, to make sure that people are at least on the right track with what to activate and not spending money on the wrong channel. If you're interested, and it is only for those that have sat through this webinar, not for those that didn't, please email melody@emergingcomms.com, and we'd love to help you out. So I'm now going to open up to Q&A. We have had some questions messaged to us ahead of this for people that couldn't come, and it will appear in the recording. But firstly, I'm just going to ask anybody who is an attendee now, if they would like to ask a question, please go ahead and put it into the chat, into the Q&A, and we will answer. So I'll give it a couple of minutes and see if anybody's got any questions. If not, I have some questions that people have asked me before, and I will answer those. And for those of you that have to dash off, thank you very much for sticking till the end. Really appreciate it. Donald, particularly, sorry for the technical issues when my computer literally crashed this morning. I'm actually using an iPad. So apologies you had to hear that. And for the rest of you, I've connected with you on LinkedIn. Thank you. So if we have no questions, I'll start off. And then if we have any put into the chat box, I will answer them. So Melody, one of the questions I was asked yesterday when I spoke to a B2B prospect, they have one person at Launchpad, CBVC, so they don't have a wholly owned foreign enterprise in market. that historically that salesperson has been running their WeChat marketing. They do events and exhibitions. They don't do much else. And not surprisingly, they've got no leads, nothing. But they said to me, Domenica, it's a very new market. We're doing really well in Vietnam and Indonesia. They're in the engineering sector. They were like, where on earth do we start? How do we do that really inexpensively, at least to see what works and what doesn't? And how do we support our salesperson? What would be your top tips for this brand on how to not only support their one and only salesperson, they're very new to the market, but to start getting some reach and some awareness of their company in China to support their salesperson?
I think what we might do is starting off with some research. So really understand the industry they are in, their brand positioning. Sometimes it might be even really helpful to have an interview with the salesperson to really understand what's the pain point. Is it because the material he or she is using is not really helping her to convert sales? It's not really giving her enough to use in order to generate leads. So I think it would be really useful to kind of talking from the sales perspective, or just to have some understanding of prospective customers. So we often do some quantitative or qualitative research in the market, actually interviewing some of the potential customers to really understand what's their pain point, what's the trigger for them to buy the products, and where they hang out, basically how they found the information.
Thanks, Mel. That's really helpful. And I have one this morning, actually, from one of our clients that we've done a very successful activation to agents in China in the education sector. They've employed or actually bolstered their sales team in China because obviously there's more leads. And this was a really interesting, and we had this with the UA actually. So the question was, Domenica, brilliant, got loads of leads. Now it's a question of prioritization because we've got limited resource. I'll answer my bit and then I'll pass on to Melody. So from my standpoint, what I said to them was two things. One, you need to have some kind of triage process. That's what we do with brands. If they don't have anybody in market, we'll triage what is important, what isn't. So you can straight away go, not a good lead, either chatted with them or we've searched for them. They're not right fit. Lead type B, worth talking to, but can probably wait a day or two, and an A grade lead need to be spoken. So one, at first is prioritization. Having some form of CRM that you're using at your sales team is going to be vital for that. And then my second bit of advice for them was to make sure there is a clear process that has been agreed at a level with marketing and with sales to make sure the sales team know what's expected of them. Now, what brought this question about from our client was the fact that we've obviously driven so many leads, but also in the education sector, it's really key acquisition times. Of course, all the salespeople are at events. So they trundle off to events, they go and meet lots of agents, and of course, leads are coming in via WeChat or other channels, via inquiry form on their Chinese website. They're not being looked at for a couple of days. And anybody who understands China it's about speed. And if you don't answer leads, then that's a really big problem. So you need to have a process in place where somebody's still answering leads if they're out at events. And I'd say this certainly happened with Liberty and a few other. This is a really big issue for brands just to get their head around that. You would have some kind of process in the UK or in Europe. So why not in China? So just have some kind of process. Melody, do you have anything to add to that?
Just one example. So we are currently doing for premium research. They have really limited resource in China. They have one team member in China. So our team, when we do the marketing, when we start generating leads, we help them to filter our leads, help them to filter into different categories, so we can prioritize who to contact first. So that really helped the sales team in China, the premium research sales team, to really focus how to resolve, how to engage first. So client really delighted we were able to help them to filter out some of the leads.
Thank you very much. And yeah, and I think this comes down to what we were talking about in this webinar, which is there's not one size fits all for anybody we work with. Everybody's got different resources, different amounts of capital investment in China, different stages of their journey. So you can't treat every client as the same, even in the same industry. So if anybody has any concerns over customer service or triage, just talk to us, because we do that for some brands in our Shanghai office, even down to going to events and supporting people and translating and so on and so forth. And then my third and final question, if we don't have any from the audience, is around exhibitions and events. So we obviously know they're really important for B2B. And there was a couple of instances a couple of years ago. I went to a book fair in Shanghai. It's the largest one in the world. And you literally had two divisions. You had Western brands there, so you can imagine who they were. So huge publishers. And then you had local publishers. And the Western brands had spent all this money on shell schemes. And shell schemes are anything from 10 to 60 to 100 plus £1,000 investment. They'd flown people all the way over from the UK or from Europe, and they weren't collecting data via WeChat. Nothing was translated, and they didn't have anybody who spoke Chinese. So that's not the way to do it. So Melody, what are your top 3 success factors you would give to brands on this webinar or watching this webinar later for making the most of your face-to-face events? So exhibitions, conferences, press launches.
I will definitely urge before they entering the event, set up an official WeChat. Yep. Utilize WeChat not just during the event, but also pre-event promotions.
Yeah.
So this is something really useful. You can already engage with your target audience to book a slot with you in your stand or have a quick chat with you. So just before the event, you already know how many people you are like qualifying those customers, and then you can spend more quality time with them within the event. So rather than just wish for the best during the event, you might find quality customer that will come and talk to you. You already engage with them before the event and then have spent some meaningful time. We often will help clients to do that. And also after event, we also do some kind of wrap up post. So talking about how successful the event was, and with some footage, some key visuals. Again, that's really helpful to really build your brand authority to wider audience. So definitely, yeah, WeChat is a great channel, whether it's for marketing or for nurturing your prospects. Yeah.
Thanks, Melody. That's fantastic. We are going to finish off now. Our audience are very quiet, but I think people tend to be a bit embarrassed to ask questions. So that's absolutely fine. Please do email us. If we can just go back to the contact details, Melody. Find me on LinkedIn, or feel free to email myself or Melody with any questions you might have, concerns, or anybody we might put you in touch with. If you're having operational issues in China, whatever it might be. And thank you very much for sticking it through to the end. I really appreciate it. It's not quite the same as face-to-face. We do a lot of face-to-face events. So do go to emergingcomms.com. You'll see all the events that we're hosting. The Little Red Book one will be up in the next couple of days, but there are some other ones up there. I will be presenting at the London School of Economics in a couple of weeks' time, and I'll be talking about similar things to what we've done today, but with a different slant, very much more of a deep dive on certain channels. So if you're based in London, I'd love to see you there.